It's 5 days before Christmas on a cold morning in Hill Valley, a small rural town in Vermont, USA. The old Raynard House, a grand, somewhat intimidating building perched on a hill, flanked by forests stretching across a snow-covered valley. The Clifford family from Chicago, who had recently purchased the property, settled into their new life, quickly putting up decorations and preparing the old house for their first Christmas in their new home. Max Clifford, the father of the family, a practicing psychiatrist who had planned to set up a new clinic in one of the outhouses attached to the Raynard residence. One evening, whilst Max was arranging furniture in his clinic, he saw a haunting vision in the mist rising in front of the bay window, a dark, hooded figure, its presence both chilling and inexplicable. The entity seemed to glow through the mist, its black, dead eyes looking straight at Max. Sarah, Max's wife, who was preparing dinner for the family, asked him how the new clinic was going and if he had got all the furniture to fit in. Max, still shocked at what he had seen earlier, stuttered a reply.
Fine.
Are you okay?
Asked Sarah.
I am a nurse. You seem awfully pale.
Yeah, he looks whiter than Lisa in her full goth makeup,
Chirped Josh, the younger sibling of the two.
Yeah, Dad, you look like you've seen a ghost.
Well, I think I did. It was a mist in the window with someone looking in.
Sarah begins to explain that half an hour before everybody came into the kitchen, while cooking, she felt a presence behind her. Turning around, there was nothing there, only the unmistakable feeling of being watched. And then the kitchen lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Sarah tried to rationalize the events, attributing them to faulty wiring. The next day, Josh, initially resentful of the move, found his curiosity roused by the conversations from last night at the dinner table. He began to explore, looking for logical explanations. While investigating the attic, he came across an old diary belonging to Mrs. Raynard. The diary spoke of a dark hooded figure, and how the house should never have been built on these ancient burial grounds. As Josh reads deeper into the diary, he finds an entry describing how her son Eric Raynard was possessed by a demon. A priest was called in to bless the house and pray for the boy, who was haunted by visions of ghostly beasts and hooded figures. Josh turned to the next page, which was blank, as if no more entries had been made. Josh, feeling puzzled and concerned, felt a cold draft drift over him. And then,
So the attic door slammed shut, engulfing him in darkness.
Josh let out a terrifying scream.
Dad, get me out of here!
Max comes running, and the door opens immediately from the other side, as if it was open all along. Confused and scared, Josh explains to Max what just happened and about the diary. On the third day after moving in, Max was having his first session with a client in his new clinic when he felt a sudden chill. The temperature in the room plummeted, and he saw his breath turn to mist. His client had vanished from the chair opposite. The papers on his desk fluttered as if caught in a breeze. Yet the windows were firmly shut. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he glimpsed a rising mist with the same hooded figure. It stood motionless, watching him. Max's heart raced, but when he mustered the courage to look directly at it, the apparition vanished once more. His client, a young woman, now back sitting in the chair in front of him, started asking,
Are you listening? Have you heard anything I've been saying to you? For 20 minutes you've sat there staring out the window. Is this how therapy works?
Stunned, Max started mumbling, grasping for his watch, and said,
That's it for today.
The young woman, not happy about having her session cut short, got up immediately and stormed out, leaving Max alone, feeling uneasy and with a gaunt appearance. Clive and Imelda, old friends of the Raynards and the closest neighbors to the Cliffords, had gotten word there was a new family moving to the hilltop house. They knew its history and the story of its location on top of an ancient Indian burial ground. As they made their way up to the house, passing an angry young woman driving away from the property, they began to realize the past was coming back to haunt them. They came up to the house and introduced themselves to the family, bringing Christmas cards and a freshly baked pie. Sarah invited their new neighbors in for lunch. Imelda went on to tell the family about the stories of the house and what had happened to Mrs. Raynard's son Eric. She also said that the priest, Father Williams, who had visited Eric, had conducted an exorcism that did not go as planned. He then died several days later, after he fell inexplicably on a broken tombstone and was impaled overnight. He was found by one of his congregation the following morning before a service. The family sits quietly listening to the pair's story. Max begins to tell them about their own experiences. Josh says,
I'm going to get that diary.
Diary? You mean Eleanor Raynard's diary? Oh no, we don't need to see that.
Josh comes back with the diary anyway, and Imelda inspects the book.
This needs to come with us. Please don't go back into the attic for now and lock the door. No one is to go in there. And we need to get back to town and speak to Father Sampson.
Clive and Imelda quickly say goodbye and head back to the Hill Valley.
Well, that was interesting,
says Sarah. The family settled quietly into the evening, but Lisa's fascination with the paranormal meant she couldn't resist conducting her own research. She went to her room and got a book from a storage box. The book, an old Gothic-style spell book she found at a garage sale back in Chicago. It had a box case made from a black wood and had a pentagram in the base of the box painted in white. Lisa began playing with the board, chanting some of the phrases in the book, trying to communicate with the spirits and moving nickels around the board to try to get something to happen.
Suddenly, she felt a cold hand grip her shoulder. Spinning around, she found herself alone, her heart pounding in her chest.
Frightened, she puts the book back in its box, shoves it under her bed, and goes to sleep. The next morning, Clive and Imelda go to visit Father Sampson at the Hill Valley Church. He is busy with a group of college students showing them around the grounds. As they walk up to the group, Father Sampson is telling them the story about how Father Williams was found impaled on the stone cross which had broken off and landed upside down. Father John Sampson, a tall man in his 60s, saw Clive and Imelda both standing there looking at the cross.
We have just been to the Raynards' old house. A new family has moved in,
says Clive.
Lucinda, the teacher who was leading the college group, interrupts and says,
Is that the house you have just told us about?
I'm afraid it is, yes,
says Father Sampson in a disgruntled voice. Father Sampson felt unsure if this was really worth his time, or just someone's overactive imagination, as he had been preparing for Christmas Mass at the church. But that skepticism was soon eroded, as Clive and Imelda began to tell the group about what the family told them yesterday. Lucinda spoke up and said,
We have been investigating paranormal occurrences around the town recently as part of our history and psychology class. Could we come along to assist?
Yes, I could use some help with this. This has happened before,
said Father Sampson. Lucinda and her group arrived with Father Sampson around mid-afternoon. The Cliffords were peering out of the window as the team drove up the road in the Hill Valley College minibus. Father Sampson introduced himself to the Cliffords, telling them that Clive and Imelda had asked him to come and help. Max hurried them inside and began telling them about the vision and supernatural occurrences.
Mr. Clifford, can we set up some monitoring equipment throughout the house?
Yes, please, thank you. We really appreciate your help,
says Sarah. Macy and Ryan, the only two students that were prepared to join Lucinda on Christmas Eve, began bringing in cameras and listening equipment and setting up heat and air sensors around the house. Macy set up devices to detect electromagnetic activity, while Ryan positioned cameras in the house's most active spots. Max took Father Sampson and Ryan over to his clinic, showing them where the hooded entity had appeared. Ryan set up a camera and a variety of sensors on Max's desk looking toward the bay window. Sarah and the children cleared a room in the basement for the college group to set up some monitoring equipment and makeshift beds for the night. As Christmas Eve drew in, the house was eerily quiet. The children had gone to their rooms for the night, and the Cliffords sat with Father Sampson, who reassured them that all will be okay. Lucinda and her team sat in the basement quietly studying the cameras and sensors and gradually fell asleep.
Lisa, in her bedroom, had got her spellbook out
and was moving around a small wooden figure she had found on the pentagram in her box.
When the temperature dropped so dramatically that her breath turned to frost, there was a shaking noise in the closet behind her.
Petrified, she turns and slowly walks toward it, getting closer and closer when the shaking stops. As she rummages through her clothes,
an old woman's twisted dead face appears through the garments,
letting out a horrifying scream. Lisa jumps backwards, terrified. Mustering the courage to look in the closet once more, she pulls back the garments again, but there is no old woman's face this time. Then, bang! A loud crashing noise behind her. The spirit board she had used, which lay on the floor, its planchette started moving on its own. Then, without warning, an unseen force gripped her, lifting her from the ground, then flinging her to the center of the room, where she levitated frozen upright and arms outstretched. In the dead of night, the house erupted into chaos. The lights flickered wildly before plunging the entire residence into darkness. The sounds of footsteps echoed through the halls. Max and Sarah stood shocked in the middle of the living room, scared to move as pictures and ornaments were violently thrown around the room, appearing to have a life of their own. The decorations seemed to come alive, and Christmas music began playing. Father John Sampson rushes down to the basement and sees the events unfolding in Lisa's room on Ryan's camera screens and rushes to help her. Bible in hand, he begins to recite prayers, his voice resonating through the house. But his words seemed to incite further fury. Objects began to move with increased aggression, and the house groaned as if in pain. Lisa, still suspended in the air, began to convulse. Her eyes rolled back, and her body contorted unnaturally. Max and Sarah arrive and watch in horror as an inhuman voice emanates from her, taunting them in a Latin language Lisa should not know. Father Sampson began an exorcism, but the entity within Lisa was strong, mocking his efforts with laughter that chilled the bones. In the basement, where Lucinda and her team had set up their main monitoring station, the equipment went haywire. Screens flickered with static, and the readings on their devices spiked erratically. Suddenly, a hooded figure materialized among them, its face obscured by darkness. Lucinda, attempting to confront it, was thrown against the wall by an unseen force and dropped to the floor in a heap. Ryan and Macy quickly pick up Lucinda and exit the basement, leaving behind all of the equipment. As the night wore on, the house seemed to come alive. The family and the team, exhausted and terrified, found themselves facing a force that defied all understanding. In a desperate attempt to save Lisa, Father Sampson continued the exorcism. But it was too late. The entity's grip was too strong. The house shook violently, as if in the throes of an earthquake. Windows shattered, sending glass flying like deadly projectiles. The walls bled a dark, blood-like substance, and the air was filled with the screams of the damned. Amidst this chaos, Father Sampson was struck down, his body crumpling to the floor lifelessly. It becomes clear they cannot win this battle, so Max, Sarah, Josh, and the remaining members of the paranormal team flee the house, leaving behind the possessed Lisa and the horrors within. The Raynard residence loomed ominously in the quiet aftermath, its sinister secrets hidden within. At the doorstep, Clive and Imelda gazed intently from a distance. Their eyes, filled with a mix of fear and knowledge, were fixed on the house. Suddenly, Lisa, now possessed, flashed a chilling, twisted smile from the upstairs window. Her appearance briefly confirmed the couple's dreadful suspicions of a new malevolent presence.